So, something that was kind of unexpected about my Equinox homecoming video was that it managed to do pretty well. I appreciate everybody's feedback on it, and I won't lie, it's what put me back in the saddle for making YouTube content. I figured, why not do it again? So, The Legend of Khiimori, formerly known as Windstorm The Legend of Khiimori, dropped its demo in this week's Next Fest after a successful Kickstarter concluding in April 2025. I first started hearing buzz about this game at some point last year, or maybe even earlier. This game is developed by Acer Interactive and Nightingale Games and published by Mindscape. Acer especially have had a track record of making horse games, having released 3 in the last 8 years under the Windstorm moniker published by Mindscape, as well as a game called Horse Tales Emerald Valley Ranch published by Microids. They also make simulator games, including Police Simulator published by Astragon Entertainment in 2022, and the other game in that genre they've released 8 months ago is Ambulance Life, a paramedic simulator published by Nacon. They've got a lot of DLC for it as well, with the latest released in April this year. So, either there is a separate team at Acer making Legend of Khiimori, or they've had to work on both, but in either case, I have concerns. A lot of concerns. And you may be saying to yourself, well, it's just a demo, and you'd be correct, but it doesn't make this demo immune from critique. You need a good foundation to build on before you start building the rest of the house, and this foundation is shaky at best. So, without further ado, let's get started with our judgmental pointer finger. So to be blunt, Acer has not had a good go of it when it comes to their games. Their first few of their games are all horse games, all with mixed reviews. They're riddled with complaints about repetitive gameplay, incomplete-looking models, lack of story, and poor animations. I see the same thing I see with almost every horse game I come across these days. Looked promising, but ended up boring and disappointing. These complaints are both on the first and second Windstorm games, and the third, which is just a remaster of the first, also has complaints of terrible optimization. I don't even understand why the devs bothered doing a remaster of the first game just to give it a new coat of paint, when the visuals were the thing that were most complimented on the original. I should also mention that Windstorm 1 and 2 are based on a series of films under the same name, which were already mid at best according to their IMDb ratings. But the fact that Acer did almost nothing with a Horse Whisperer story when there's plenty of creative liberties to take with that? Crazy. And I think they realized this because just a month before releasing Legend of Khiimori's demo, they dropped the Windstorm prefix from the name. And to be honest, I'm not fully sure why the Windstorm moniker was there from the start, since as far as I can tell, the movies don't have a Mongolian courier, just the same ginger girl and a brunette boy. It was the right decisions for a lot of reasons, so I'm glad they did it, but it does make me wonder if this game was supposed to be something else at the start. In their other genre, simulation, Ambulance Life also has mixed reviews, with people complaining about poor performance, little to do in the base game with a ton of DLC needed to make the game fun. In other words, The Sims model of monetization. According to a lot of reviews of people who claim to be EMTs, there's also little medical realism, which is a bad sign for a simulation game. Police Simulator also has similar issues with realism, optimization, and monetization practices. So that gives us several solidly iffy games for Acer's track record. They don't appear to have really improved their development cycles in the over 8 years of their existence, and that in itself concerns me. And it's not to say that some issues couldn't be chalked up to deadlines given by publishers or a constant cycling of developers, but in any case, the studio as a whole has not improved its practices over this long a period of time, and that in itself gives me a lot of pause as to how invested I should actually be in their new game. I'm all for second chances, but now they've had a lot of games to sort their shit out, and as far as I can tell, they haven't. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this has been the most abhorrent gameplay experience I've had due to controls not working or randomly changing. For example, in the tutorial, you are told to use the mouse wheel to change speeds, but it doesn't work because the speed controls are space and shift. However, about 20 minutes in, suddenly the mouse wheel control does work without any change of inputs from my end. I didn't change the basic control scheme whatsoever, and it does not appear that you can change inputs from the player's side. And, of course, there is also lag, because it seems that so many devs do not understand how to optimize UE5, and given this studio's track record, I'm not confident they'll ever fix it. Including the control scheme issues I just mentioned before, while the handbook is a good place to put tutorial messages, it does not include the controls. So if somebody accidentally dismisses a tutorial before it's read, it can make life extremely difficult as the player controls are not super intuitive. Specific example are the pouches. I missed that I had to hit 1 first in order to put the pouches in my hand, but remembered the mouse controls, but since I didn't hit that 1 first, it didn't work. This is not explained in the handbook version of the tutorial. Resting is not explained in the horse care tutorial, which frankly should have come before sending the player out into the world, but whatever. So now I have a horse with low health that is not getting better from the basic care that you're giving it, or even like healing injuries using the bandages. I also didn't get paid for any jobs after being out for at least 2 quests, one of which is indeed a delivery quest. So now I can't buy bandages or buy recipes to craft bandages, or whatever the items are, maybe a poultice of some kind. It just feels very easy for people to get stuck with an injured or unhealthy horse and no way to dig out of it unless rest is allowed or tutorialized much sooner in the game. And as far as the actual interactive feedback you get, there's a good basis there, but there's a lack of sound and voices, which creates a very dead experience for a game that's essentially pitched as an immersive riding game. And the screen will randomly flash red if your horse is having trouble, but it's hard to tell what it is until you go into the horse menu to go look at it. The icons on the HUD are also tiny, so it's hard to tell at a glance what the issue is that you're experiencing. I think the HUD scale in general is a bit too small or needs to be better rearranged. The shop is also a disaster. The count of items doesn't automatically get set correctly when you're buying things, so you have to hover away and back to an item to buy it again. It also just sometimes won't work with attempting to buy multiple items, even if you have the coins for it. Exploration is also weirdly stilted. More specifically, the horse can't swim, which seems extremely odd to me. Having to awkwardly edge around a lake feels like the antithesis of exploration. You're also punished for going to hot areas that don't look a single bit different than the areas surrounding it. Honestly, these shouldn't even exist, considering Mongolian horses are literally supposed to be hardy in extreme conditions, but nonetheless, these hot areas exist, and it created issues for me later on in my experience. And just like in Equinox, it's a long ride to get from one place to another as the game has you crisscrossing the map. This, I think, is fine if there's actually stuff to do along the way, but there isn't. And then having areas that arbitrarily slow you down in ways that don't make sense just makes it a really frustrating experience to play. So, also just to be blunt, this game is a bit too close to Death Stranding for my taste. The weighting makes a certain sort of sense. Obviously, you can't carry everything that you want to on horseback, but connect nodes to the YAM network as a quest point took me straight out of the game. This is set in ancient Mongolia, not 2055 America, or whatever the year is. And I think this game missed things about what made Death Stranding work for so many players. I don't personally like the game for a lot of reasons, but the care put into animations as Sam interacts with the world and how game systems connect are not only great details, but actually give the player the feedback they need to make better decisions with gameplay over time. It makes so much sense that you have to tilt Sam to make him not fall when there's a water current pushing against his legs, and he's also got a ton of stuff attached to him. While this gameplay is exhausting for me personally, and I didn't particularly connect with the ham-handedness of the story, I understand why the game is designed in this way, and I can respect that it's like that. Meanwhile, Legend of Khiimori has none of that visual information. The game also starts messing with your ability to carry items at just half of max capacity, causing the horse to lose stamina faster at 16 kilograms and over-encumber at 32. You can also breed horses in this game apparently, but why would you? What is actually the focus here? On a positive note, though, I think it is absolutely goddamn fantastic we are forced to take care of our horses instead of treating them like glorified bicycles. That is so important. We don't even need a sledgehammer of a story to understand that, like we get in Death Stranding, because, hey, the horse is our main mode of transportation, and it would suck if we lost that. The stakes are made clear without much legwork needed to establish them. So you may have noticed in my footage that there's a timer, and yes, that's how long you get to play the demo, an hour and a half, hard stop. And I do not get the idea of that at all. Obviously you want your demo to stop after a certain point, but most games do this by picking a mission that is a good stopping point and ending the game there. Add to this all the problems people have with controls, troubleshooting lag, learning how to play the game, etc., and frankly it's a recipe for disaster. It goes from a somewhat fun and chill game to unfun and anxiety-inducing in a second, and I definitely felt my patience dwindling every time I got stuck on something. That's not a good impression to leave on players, and also really is a shot in the foot in terms of marketing. I know plenty of people who cover games who will spend literal hours in a demo to get all the information they need so they can write a good piece about the game, and players should also get that time to really get to know the game as well, so they can make a decision about whether or not to continue supporting it, as well as be able to give informed feedback about issues they may be experiencing, or just be able to recreate a bug or whatever that they need to report. One of the comments I saw from the development team is that they have not yet finished writing their dialogue, quests, and story. Frankly, the reason games like Death Stranding work is because of their story, not in spite of it. If the game wants to take a Death Stranding approach, it's going to need a story, and I can't lie, I find the lack of purpose for quests, even in early access, to be massively unappealing. RPGs work because they have a reason for the quests to exist. No story, no purpose. What is the purpose of adding all of the things that the Kickstarters have asked for when they don't have a reason to exist yet? It's basically the opposite approach Equinox took, and definitely not for the better. While I didn't love the way Equinox approached their story and the way it was presented to players with text on slides, it at least existed and the quests made sense to do even though they were boring, but they were at least relevant to what was unfolding in the story, what little there was when I played at that time. And it could just be that it's in the plans and design document, it just hasn't been created yet, but it will make for a much less compelling gameplay experience. Given this is set in ancient Mongolia, I would have loved to have had some basic world lore, some basic background about the characters, anything. Even just a little bit of that would make it actually compelling to play the game. But if there's no underlying story and purpose to the quests, then what reason do I have to do them? Funnily enough, as I was researching this, I found one of the devs, Alice Rupert, runs a blog called The Main Quest. One of the blogs she wrote in 2021 is titled 8 Common Horse Mistakes I Want Game Developers to Stop Making. A lot of these things are specifically concerning anatomy, which is fine. I personally tend to not pay attention unless it's really egregious, but I understand more nerdy horse lovers will want that attention to detail. I will say though, reading some of the linked reviews that came after that article, it had me scratching my head. There was a conclusion to an article about Elden Ring's torrent and his bad animation, which states, Elden Ring is not the type of game that you should play for its horse. And I just kind of thought, well, duh? I don't think anybody was doing that. I guess my point is that it's interesting to see a dev talk about other games and wonder how the game they will end up working on stacks up to their own expectations. Granted, many of these articles were written before Report became a part of Acer's dev team, including this list, but I could pick out at least one sin out of Report's list that's committed in Legend of Khiimori. So I guess the moral of the story is that we devs all think we can do it better than others, and frankly, no one is immune to making a potentially shitty game. Except me. I set expectations low to begin with, so if I fuck up, it's still a very low bar to clear. The other point is that it takes more than anatomy to make a good horse game. I actually tend to be the most forgiving of anatomy, unless it's a specific bragging point from the devs. Then if it's bad, then I will absolutely comment on it. Horses are fucking weird creatures to animate, they're surprisingly complex. Getting them to play nice with the rest of a world without a ton of collision issues is nigh impossible to begin with, I'm sure, so I'm fully willing to forgive some bad anatomy in most cases. I can forgive a lot of game's quirks if enough of the game is good enough to hold my interest, but this one unfortunately doesn't at the moment. And the thing is, Legend of Khiimori's horses don't look any more realistic than other games I've played, and in fact, in some ways is just as bad as any other game's horses. All the hair moves in one solid chunk, which I get is for gameplay reasons. It'd be an optimization nightmare to make the hair any other way, but it does mean there's a less realistic experience. And just to be clear, I'm cool with stylization, which is what the game appears to be going for. I'm just pointing out what I see. The point is, Legend of Khiimori does not feel good to play at the moment for so many reasons. It's a real shame because the concept is interesting, but an interesting concept does not automatically translate to a good game. I still want to see how they finish this game, but with the development team's track record and what has been laid out before me here, I don't feel very confident in it getting much better. I can give this demo credit for at least being better than Equinox's early access experience, but to be blunt, it's barely clearing that bar for me. In any case, do play the demo. It is free, so I encourage everybody to go check it out. There's literally nothing lost except a couple of hours of your time, and good luck, devs. You're going to need it. Thanks everybody for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you would like to see more from me. I've actually been playing Ranch of Rivershine lately, and I'm really enjoying it, so I may make a video on that as well in the near future. In the meantime, I'll see you guys later. Bye!